This demonstration is to discuss our login tools. Centralpoint is known as a cross-forest single sign-on, and that means that we can authenticate against a number of different systems. Just to help you kind of understand what that means, we might have some users signing in as an employee. Oftentimes these people authenticate against Active Directory or LDAP, where it's welcome employee. We might have other users logging in as a, let's say a client, just a very basic example, where it's, welcome ABC client to your private portal where they only see their information. And also when they log in, they might only see certain types of data that's based on their authentication. Or we may have another user here who logs in who is a a volunteer or someone who signed up for newsletters, or in this case a board member. Sometimes board members aren't found in the Active Directory. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. So we like to just kind of give you a little visual before we dive into Global Login, because Global Login is considering all of these users, and Centralpoint, kind of by its very namesake, isn't just an intranet or just an extranet. It can be all of the above. And when we have a secure sign-on within a portal, we might need it to be Active Directory. So we might say we need to integrate with Active Directory, and we enter the path here. So what we're doing is we're relating the path of Active Directory. Let's call it the finance department, finance 101. So let's say that's the name of your path, and of course that would be the formal path to Active Directory. We can also support secure paths. Sometimes organizations have a highly secure path. We can also support that. And what we're doing is we're relating that path to a role and to an audience. So to make sure we have the proper role for our finance people, we're going to create one here called finance people. And we're going to link the global login tool for finance 101 to the path or to the role in Centralpoint known as finance people. We also have finance directors. So anybody finance gets to see any of this stuff. For an example, I'll just say finance people. We also might say that these people only get to access a particular channel. So maybe they get to access the intranet and the portal we have in China, for an example. So this notion that it's kind of one-to-many, roles can relate to many audiences, a person might relate to many roles, is found here. And that means that as we log a user in, we're going to be talking to this record, actually all the records. We're going to look at all the records, find through every one of these paths if there's a match for that user's credentials in the other system. We're then going to return them back to likely a landing page that says, do you want to see the stuff in China or the intranet today? We might give them that option, or we might just force them into the intranet, whatever you decide. And that way we have a secure connection. Also, the bind of that authentication allows us to glean certain information. For example, his or her address, preferences, age, whatever we want to gather that we store in session. The reason that's important is that as they're filling out forms within the site, if any of the forms call for address or name or gender or whatever it is, we can pre-populate those forms. So the nice thing about our forms tool, and again the harmony of Centralpoint, is that we can inherit and glean that session-based information, so it makes it easier for them to fill out forms. It also allows us to track what they're doing, of course, every step of the way. So when we log someone in, not only can we track what they're doing, but we can also, let me type in the right password, forgive me. We can also compare their activity with other people's activity. So for example, how well is this individual doing compared to everybody else based on their interaction? Any transaction they do, any online test they take, for an example, like this one here, or form they fill out, we can now attribute that to that user and or that authentication. So of course, we're not sending anything back to Active Directory. We've just automatically saved this guy's identity in line with the certificate taken. So we're saving a fair amount of information beyond that authentication. For example, what this person's preferences are, what his behavioral where the activity on the site is. Did he or she pass the test? So as they pass the test, we know that it's John who logged in from finance who passed the test, and that's how we're able to make that bind. Back to the cross-forest concept, we might need to authenticate against your CRM system, Sugar, Salesforce, whatever. We might need to authenticate against PeopleSoft or some custom database that you've developed internally. So in the case of authenticating with a custom database, we need to define the path of where that lives. And then the parameters are what challenge are we collecting during their login against your back office system to make sure that they meet that criteria. And that's what allows us to get them in. So sometimes we have to do some custom work if you have a custom database, or passwords or security things to get in there. And sometimes we have to do that through a tunnel. Another thing we want to mention is that we do support Windows authentication or single sign-on, and this help file here explains what that is. I know one of the benefits to our authentication is that we can allow users securely to access the intranet from home. So they need not be in your environment to access the intranet. We have a way of doing that. So this is kind of we like to call it the traffic cop of Centralpoint. This routes the right people to the right areas and securely manages their transaction. I want to point out when integrating with a CRM system or other databases besides Active Directory, oftentimes we need to send back to that system the results of whatever they've done. So for example, if we have somebody filling out forms, and we're capturing what forms they filled out, the data from that transaction, once John fills it out, etc., we might need to send that back to the CRM system. Oftentimes we're asked in relation to authentication, how do we integrate? Well, authentication is one point of it, recognizing the user, but basically the activity we're collecting here, surveys, tests, forms, products ordered, whatever the case might be, we might need to feed that back so that all of that information is in line in the other system, in the CRM system. For example, we might have that employee fill out a form, and that form that they fill out might generate a document like a contract. That contract, found here, might, here's the sample contract signed by whoever, whatever. We might need to feed the link to that contract back to the CRM system, so in line with the account we can show here's the contract they signed. That link can live elsewhere. We can move that file somewhere else, or that link can remain here in Centralpoint, kind of as your content repository. So a lot of possibilities there. Another thing I want to mention on authentication, rarely used, but we have a feature besides Global Login that allows us to welcome and authenticate users based on an IP address or range. And what this is really designed for is if you have a marketing partner, or you have kind of a loose knit kind of partnership, we might welcome them by range whatever. So we put in their IP range here. And that way we don't have to set up a username and password in which to authenticate them. We just say, look, if you're coming in from that office, we can take you to a new landing page, and we can say, welcome everyone from our partners at whatever facility. And they have certain roles assigned to them. So we're fundamentally authenticating them based on where they're coming from. Conversely, we can also block entire IP ranges from accessing the site at all. So they can't even load the public site. So IP Manager is a little interesting. Another feature I'd like to mention on Global Login is this one right here. So although we can integrate with any custom database, CRM system, Active Directory, Facebook, whatever we want, you'll notice one of the features here is also Centralpoint. So this confuses a lot of clients. Why would you authenticate users against the very system trying to authenticate somewhere else? This is why we have Centralpoint. There are a lot of people who don't belong as any kind of member. They don't live in Active Directory. They don't live in your CRM system. Maybe these are people who come to the site and they're just kicking tires, or maybe these are candidates that you're interviewing that have not yet been hired, And we need a place to store them so that we can give them some privileges, we can give them limited access, or we can give them some login rights so we can serve their needs. So think of these people as kind of the pre-relationship. You know, they're either applying to become a dealer, or they're applying to become an employee, or they've signed up to receive newsletters. And this is our container. So think of this as our own Active Directory built inside. You don't have to use this at all, but oftentimes we'll set up public-facing forms on your site that say, hey, sign up for more information, sign up for some type of privileges, and of course this becomes kind of a holding area or pool of candidates. And as this user becomes a full-blown employee or client, well, then they no longer would be found in here. We can then deposit them into Active Directory, or you would, we should say, you know, once they become an employee, you would add them to your network security, and then we would start authenticating them the next week or next day from the Active Directory path. So when you think of global login, you really should step back and think about you know, not just your intranet or your extranet, but rather everyone. You know, what are we going to do with our suppliers, our partners, our whoever? And Centralpoint's the only platform that can provide you that type of control, where we're harmonizing the user experience around the authentication. So it's an opportunity to step back, but we often see clients add their employees, and then a year or two later they might add their dealers, and really, if you step back and look at it, we can add them all and start servicing them all right now. So for more information on Global Login, contact your analyst or production manager. Thank you.